All right, so thank you for joining us today, and welcome on behalf of the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns to a program from the Division of Taxation. My name is Jennifer Slattery. I'm the Director of Training for the League, and today we're very pleased to have with us Nina Savage and her team. And I'm just going to turn it right over to Nina and let her get started. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to the members of the League of Cities and Towns for joining us today. I'd like to start by saying this is your meeting. We're here to answer questions if you want to, but this can be a conversation or it can be us presenting the information. We have a huge deck for you, which we will be providing at the end of this session. And we welcome any questions. I'd like to start out by introducing myself. My name is Nina Savage. I'm the tax administrator and I oversee the Division of Taxation. I've been here for almost 8 years and about 7 years in this role. With me today is Leo LaBeouf. And Leo is our newly appointed Taxpayer Experience Liaison. He has been with the agency for over 26 years, has worked across every unit of the agency and knows it well. And I'll be explaining what his role is in a minute. Also with me is Amanda Taroki, who is our internet communication specialist. And if you go on our website, www.tax.ri.gov, you'll see all of the content that Amanda is pushing out with our team. Finally, also with us is Carrie Mosca, and she is our Chief of Staff. She's new to the agency and she will be observing today. So let's get started with the agenda. As next slide, Amanda. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the division, the Taxpayer Experience Office, how your engagement with our taxpayer portal and with the division can actually help the management of and your experience with the Division of Taxation. And then Leo will get into the specifics of the portal, cannabis, which is new, and what that means for cities and towns, and some best practices. So a little bit about the Division of Taxation. We have about 223 funded FTEs, but we hover right around 180. Like all of you, we're having a difficult time finding people, and we've had a lot of turnover due to resignations, retirements, and other things. We administer over 59 different taxes and fees in fiscal year 22. We collected more than $5 billion. And as you know, some of that $5 billion is distributed as pass through to the cities and towns. Our mission is to foster voluntary compliance and to administer and collect all taxes in a cost-effective and efficient manner. And finally, one of the reasons that we're here with you today is to assist taxpayers. And sometimes people don't think of cities and towns and other government agencies as taxpayers, but we are. The cities and towns pay taxes, they pay withholding, they pay sales, and any number of taxes depending on how they're set up. So this is part of that. About us, this is who we are. Many people think that the Division of Taxation only deals with taxpayers and tax professionals, but we are constantly engaged almost on a daily basis with all of the other entities in blue that are there. Taxpayers, the General Assembly, IRS, courts, other states and cities and towns. So as you know, we do all of the distributions and collect the real estate conveyance tax as well. Next slide. So just to tell you one new initiative that I'm really excited about, because it's been several years in development. And we went through an IT integration over a 5-year period of time. We then changed our organization, and now we're in a position to really create jobs that that maximize the benefit to you, the taxpayer, of that technology and of that organizational change. So Leo LaBeouf is part of the Office of Taxpayer Experience, which sits in the Office of Tax Administrator. And that office is made up of me, the Assistant Tax Administrator. Leo is the external facing part of that tax experience office, and he's the one that has hit the road, done numerous outreach, is constantly engaging with our community to tell them about what we do and how we do it and how we can improve. Another initiative that's not as well known is our internal facing taxpayer experience. Some of you may have benefited from that because all of that, the excise tax team has reached out to your teams to teach you how to comply with real estate conveyance tax in the portal. Our audit team has reached out to numerous cities and towns about your sales tax exemptions and other things. I'll get into that in more detail in a minute. But really, this is for your benefit, and you are all taxpayers. And so I want you to know that this is a very conscious and intentional part of what we're doing now. Next slide, Amanda. So this is one of my favorite graphics, and the headline here is, if we move everything toward voluntary compliance, it's cheaper, it's easier on the taxpayer, and that really is our goal. You heard me say that our mission, part of our mission, is voluntary compliance. And so everything we do is viewed under this lens. What is the taxpayer's responsibility? How can the Division of Taxation make the taxpayer's responsibility easier? And then at the bottom, you'll see how are we improving taxpayer services voluntary compliant. So I've talked about our taxpayer experience team. Leo's going to talk about expanding the taxpayer portal, digital signatures, and then we are constantly improving staff training, using data analytics, improving our forms, and expanding easier audit programs for taxpayers. Next slide. So what have we done for the cities and towns? So many of you, I don't know if you were involved, but there's a law that says that annually the Division of Taxation has to get records from every public body related to their public employees. And what we do is we used to run it through our data and send notices to every public employee that had not complied with their tax filing or payment requirements. Well, we have stopped requesting that data from cities and towns. We're using our W-2 filing, our withholding filing data submitted by you. And Leo, when he was in personal income tax, worked very hard to update those filings. So that's allowed us to do that initiative without us putting a burden on the cities and towns. We have also, through our audit team, which is managed by Susanna Coburn, that team actually reached out to every city and town because we noticed that there were bills that would have gone out due to filing errors. You didn't have permits, your exemptions were out of date, and there were filings that weren't being performed correctly, which would have generated a lot of bills. So what we did over the last year is we did a lot of cleanup, we reached out to the city clerks. We've done a presentation with the city clerks on the real estate and the changes to the real estate conveyance tax. And we are also now going out. So we did that over the last year. We've done the proactive taxpayer portal training, and our audit team has also reached out to non-compliant cities and towns. Our recommendation, you'll get this more in detail, why it really is better for the cities and towns to register on the taxpayer portal. There are a number of reasons that Leo will go over, but the headline is, many you have seen a lot of data breaches, data issues, security issues. It really is in the municipality's best interest to consolidate these filings, do them all in one place. It's more secure. You don't risk losing your employee data or your tax data if you have more of a siloed approach with different municipal agencies doing these filings. So we've tried to message that in our outreach to the cities and towns. Next slide. Today I'm here to talk to you about the income tax refund offset program. So 42-142-7 is the law that allows us to offset personal income tax refunds for tax debts. So at the end of this session, not only will we provide you with the deck that I'm presenting today, but a packet which will provide a copy of the statute, the overview, contact information, file layout, statistics, and a form memorandum of understanding. Next slide. So the benefits are, and what it is you, the city or town sends us a data file, and we offset refunds for any debts that you have. Now they can be any type of debts. You can send as many as you want, as little as you want, but it creates a revenue stream for the cities. And I'll get into what our experience has been. So it doesn't cost the city anything. It reduces your outstanding debts, increases collections. It's low maintenance. Once you do the upfront testing, it's automated. You send a electronic file to us and we scoop refunds and kick it back to the city and town electronically. And there are a number of cities and towns that have tried this. A 30-day notice is required to the debtor, and as soon as the city sends a 30-day notice, they realize revenue right away because people don't want their refunds offset, and they start collecting right away. Next slide. So the process is you, your CFO or your CEO of your city or town would can send me an email, and I'll share that after the presentation, saying you would like to participate in the income tax refund offset program. In order to start scooping refunds, the law requires that you have to send a 30-day written notice to the debtor. And then we have a form MOU, which I will also provide that you would sign. We then start exchanging test files with our technical team. And once approved, the process can be repeated weekly, monthly, but in order to not be kicked out, so to speak, you're required to send a file at least once a year, or else you have to retest. Some of your vendors already have the capability to transmit these files, and every city and town is different, but we'll work with you and or your vendor to do the testing. The largest benefits in terms of revenue for the cities and towns are the first 2 quarters, because that's when most of the income tax returns are filed and refunds are issued. Typically, that has been our experience. The biggest thing to keep in mind is this might be a number of cities and towns. The better data you have, the better results you get. So if we can't match our data to your data, we will not offset. So we have to have a pretty high level of confidence in the data in order to offset a refund. And this has helped some cities and towns update their records too. So, and SSNs, obviously, social security numbers are the best criteria. So next slide. And this slide just goes over what's some of the participating cities and towns have realized. I think the last several years, you've seen a decrease in revenue. I think just like the state the cities and towns have had a lot of staffing challenges, a lot of initiatives, not enough people, retirements, all of that. So we're doing a reset on these, on this. And part of the reason I'm out here is because there has been so much turnover at the city and town level. I just want people that may be new in their roles to know that this program is out there and that we are here to help the cities and towns collect revenue to the extent they have the bandwidth to take this project on. But as I said, it's really, it's upfront. It might seem like a lot, but once you get it set up, it's a nice revenue stream. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Leo LaBeouf and for the next part of the presentation. And as I said, feel free to ask questions, or if you don't have any, we'll send you the deck and you can shoot us emails after. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. So the taxpayer portal is really the best mechanism for you to log on and pay all in one place, all of the different taxes that each city and town does remit over. So Nina mentioned the withholding tax. Some cities and towns do pay sales tax through whether it's a vending, convenience booth in the city hall or whatever it might be at some of the parks that things are run at. We also get a lot of these, the real estate conveyance is one of the filings that every city and town does have to pay. So all of these different tax types can be seen on the portal. What are the benefits? Again, everything can be filed and paid in one site. You can schedule payments ahead of time. So you can do it up to a year in advance. Most of the taxes filed by the cities and towns are filed much more frequently than that. So you can certainly schedule those a week ahead of time, a month ahead of time. In the case of the real estate conveyance, maybe on January 5th, all the amounts due for December, and you want to schedule that prior to the due date and have it come out the day before the due date, but get all the work done on the 5th because someone's going on vacation. So you can schedule that in the future. All the returns filed through the portal have an interactive feature to them. So it does help with the accuracy of the filing, making sure everything is, all the required fields are completed. It also allows for some calculated fields to not necessarily have to be filled out. So by using the interactive nature of the form, you may reduce time in having to do corrected filings or wasting time filling out fields that you don't need to. You can view previous filings and payments, and we'll show some of that in a little bit. And you can store the banking information for future use. We do currently have over 46,000 registered users on the portal that have submitted over $1 billion in payments so far, just in 2022. Amanda, next slide. So how do you register for the portal? The link's there on the screen, and it will be interactive when we send you the presentation. So you can click right on that link, taxportal.ri.gov. If you're a first-time user, there's a box on the bottom on the left side of your screen there. It says create new user. So you would click on that box down there, right there, Amanda, great. And you create a user ID and a password. The way that works is that user ID or password, you can have it created for as many users as you want. We'll show you in a second, next slide, Amanda, where once you get that user account set up, you can call the Division of Taxation and get a PIN. That PIN will be sent directly to the to the address we have on file, so it'll get sent right to City Hall. And logging in using your user ID and password, you can be prompted to put that PIN in. Correct, right here. So on this slide, you'll click where it says register here as an administrative user right there in the center of your screen. The first person to log in can be an administrator, or you can have everyone create an administrator, set up as an administrator by adding the PIN. Once the administrator is created, they can also assign tasks to different users. So for the sake of argument, if the financial office makes all the payments, they need to be the administrator of the office. But you want the tax assessor to have access to be able to, or the clerk to be able to have access only to the real estate conveyance tax. You can assign that user only that account access. Or whoever pays the sales tax or the withholding tax in the HR department only gets access to the withholding. The administration of those accounts are up to each city and town to determine how much access they want to give them. But the administrator, the first person that you create, the one who receives the PIN and creates that PIN, has will have access to everything. Next slide, Amanda. So you'll click off the box, whether it's an FEIN, which would be the case for the city and town. If it's an individual, they can do it through the SSN. But in your case, you're going to click on the dot where it says FEIN and required PIN, that first dot. Next screen, Amanda. And then you'll be allowed to see, the administrator will see all the accounts the taxpayer has. In this case, we just took a screenshot of 3 accounts in particular, but your real estate conveyance, you'll notice here it's 1 of 2 down at the bottom. So whether it's 1 of 5 or 1 of 3, all of the accounts will be displayed on the screen. And you can see them in order to administer all of them. It shows your current balance, it shows the last date of activity, and it shows the last period that was filed. Next slide, Amanda. So if you were to click on one of those accounts, so in this case, you're looking at a real estate conveyance account, real estate and mobile home. You can also see in there'll be an account summary tab. That account summary or account details actually gives you all of the filing periods in one view. Tells you whether they're all in balance or out of balance and whether a return has been filed for each of those. That comes into play where, Amanda, if you go back one slide for me, you can see in this case, the withholding account for this particular taxpayer has a credit balance, meaning it looks like they're overpaid. However, Amanda, if you click on that next slide, this is an account where everything is in balance for the real estate conveyance. But if we look at the next screen, you're going to see that this is a case where there is a credit balance. The period status does show overpaid, but this period is overpaid simply because the return has not been filed. So this one screenshot would show you whether whether your account is in compliance or not. So at the administrator level, it allows you to monitor each of the different accounts. And why is this important? So in particular, with the real estate conveyance tax, if an account is not filed, if a return is not filed, funds cannot be properly distributed on the distributions that the statute requires. So in particular, in the account we're looking at here, the funds for July of 2002 can't be distributed to the proper accounts without that return to tell us how they are distributed. So it's very important. And by using the portal, you can see and keep these accounts tracked and properly documented, properly filed, and in balance. Next slide, Amanda. This is in the system is where you would also file all your returns or make your payments. So on the screen here in front of you, we show that it's easy to see. It's an online transaction. File a form would be how you would file a return for any of the tax types you need to file. Here you would pull down the name will default for you. The account, you would have to pull down the drop down to choose the account you'd want. In this case, we have the real estate conveyance shown. Your ID will default to match your account. The form type, you would pull down the conveyance tax return from the drop down. And the return type would usually be original. However, you do have the option to file an amended return. You would then complete the filing method and the filing period that you're looking to file for. Click next. And then the return would come up. You do have to make sure you're completing all the tabs that are applicable. We have done a presentation for all the town clerks previously, in which we explain the real estate conveyance tax return to them particularly. So Schedule B and Schedule C of the real estate conveyance are actually tabs that you can upload a copy of the document and not necessarily fill out those tabs. But the person who normally fills out these returns on paper, or hopefully fills them out on portal, because we do have a lot of cities and towns that are already on the portal, would know which tabs for their tax type to fill out. Next slide, Amanda. And then you would get to summary information when you've completed it. You've hit the calculate, you've hit the submit button, and now you're gonna get your summary. On the summary tab, if all the information is correct, you would click next. You would read the signature piece that says that you're submitting this under penalties of perjury. This is the same information that is on all of the paper tax forms that we have. You would click yes to proceed. And then here is where they would, the person completing the filing would click the payment now button to process a payment at the same time. Now, we do know with the cities and towns, there are some cases where the person who submits the payment is separate and different from the person that actually files the return. So you do have the option here to print the return so that the return can be provided to whoever does make the payment. And in the online transaction menu that we showed you before, the person who's submitting the payment would just click on make a payment instead of file a form in the option menu. That make a payment option or clicking on the button on the previous screen would bring you here to complete the payment amount. You put in the amount you're looking to pay, it should equal the total tax amount, and you click on the payment method for the bank account that you have had the option to store. You would then click next. You would pick the date that you want the information, the payment to come out on. And again, that is based on the feature that allows you to provide the information and warehouse the payment. Click the submit button, and now your payment will be submitted, your return will be submitted, and your payment will be submitted. So Leslie, I did say where I see your question in the chat about where you can find the presentation. As Nina did say, we're going to forward the presentation to all of you after this call, after our session is over. So we will make sure you have a copy of the presentation. Great. So next slide, Amanda. So now you've submitted your return, you've submitted your payment. We've shown you can see all of the accounts. Amanda, next slide. What we do want to tell you is that we have begun to do live in-portal training sessions for many different groups. And we're more than willing to do one for the cities and towns, or we're going to stop putting these sessions on regularly. So you're also welcome to be able to sign up for one of those sessions. The best way to do that is the third bullet below. You go to tax.ri.gov, and in the bottom right-hand corner, there's ability for you to put on your email address and get regular updates from the division. One of the updates that you would get along the way will be these online portal training sessions. So they are interactive. You are allowed to ask questions in real time, and you are able to see each of the steps, get the piece, all the pieces there. So certainly, that information should be open to any member of the city and town who might have need to have access to the training and learn from the on how to submit all these payments. We do really encourage people to each of the cities and towns to get active in the portal. We do have a handful of cities and towns that still are not filing and paying on the portal. And it really is just making your lives more difficult. Because we want that interactiveness, those sessions, the forms completion, as well as the access to the accounts and seeing the statuses in real time really it can be beneficial. So here is the contact information for the portal group. It's also the contact information for the sales and excise tax team. The portal group does allow you to, would be where you would contact to receive access to a PIN. Lynn, any tax type that we have is available to be paid on the portal. Especially and certainly all of the tax types that a city and town is responsible for. Every account is accessible, every return is fileable, able to be filed and paid through the portal. There's not one tax type that's not available. Okay, so one of the other things we wanted to do today is just give you guys an update on cannabis. Since cannabis, adult use or recreational cannabis, it's been called both types, became active as of December 1st. Medical cannabis has been in the state for several years now. Adult use cannabis as of December 1st became active in some of the cities and towns. The difference between the two are displayed here in the slide. There's a few different returns that have to be filed between the two. They both overlap with sales tax. From a city and town perspective, the adult use cannabis is the one that impacts you the most. So for adult use cannabis, there is a 10% excise tax, but there is a 3% local excise tax. So that 3% tax flows from the state based on the return that's filed. That return is the cannabis excise tax form that the taxpayers only have access to be able to be filed on the portal. And that form, once completed by the individuals, includes a 3% local excise tax that we will then distribute to each of the cities and towns that the 3% tax applies to. We'll get into more details as to what that, how that applies to the cities and towns. The returns for cannabis that are filed by the taxpayers, not filed by the city and towns, are filed on the 20th of each and every month. And we're giving you this information just to kind of keep you informed of the process. We will, the distributions to each of the cities and towns will happen once per quarter. So the first distribution that any city and town will receive will be April of 2023. The way this works is the returns for December, January, and February are the returns that will be included in the April distribution. This is because December is filed and due January 20th. January is February 20th, and February is March 20th. So the March return actually is not due until April 20th, which would be after the distribution. We would cut off the receipts as of March 31st, and all of the receipts prior to March, so from January 1st through March 31st, would be distributed in the April distribution. And that will continue to roll as we go along. Now, in future periods, if a taxpayer files late, so for the sake of argument, the taxpayer files a December return in April, well, that December return will actually be part of the distribution for July. So those distributions are based on the dates of the receipt. We obviously can't distribute for funds or returns we haven't received yet. The distribution is based on the sales location. So that could mean in some of these cannabis retailers that they will be doing delivery. So we'll get into that a little bit later. And you'll receive the funds in the same method and same process as you receive meals and beverage distributions or any of the other distributions you receive from us currently. The method of making the distribution won't change. Next slide, Amanda. So this is just a slide. We're not going to get into details about it, but what we did explain we met with all of these cannabis businesses, all of the cannabis retailers, and we walked through record keeping and tracking of the sales for each of them and what the expectation was. One thing to note is that they do have to separately state each tax that they're collecting for. So that's the sales tax, the state excise, and the local excise should be a separate line item on the receipt. So it may take these retailers a little bit of time to make sure all of this is implemented, but ultimately they are responsible to itemize the taxes on their receipts. Next slide, Amanda. This is what the back of the return will look like. So you'll see each and every city and town is listed. The taxpayer will have to put in the amount of sales for the city and town that the sale relates to, the jurisdiction. And that amount must equal their total local tax amount from the front page of the return. Next slide, Amanda. And this is where we get into the location. So just like meals and beverage, when entities or businesses, restaurants deliver, the delivery location is the jurisdiction of where the sale takes place. So the taxpayer's location may be one city in town, but they may deliver into a neighboring city in town, and they have to account for that. And the accounting for that delivery would occur on the back page of that other form. So there may be jurisdictions that receive cannabis revenue that actually the location that is different from the location of cannabis business. The statute does require the distribution of funds based on the delivery location or the location of the change in ownership, I guess you could say, for the product. So you will see some of those distributions, and it will come through. Like I said, the first one will be April of 2023. Next slide, Amanda. So we just wanted to kind of close and finish our presentation today with some best practices, some things for you to be aware of. The W-2 submission process has cleaned up over the years. And Nina said it, as she stated earlier on, it has gotten good enough that we haven't requested employee compliance files from the cities and towns. But I do want to remind the cities and towns that the process to submit an annual W-2 is to request a secure FTP link through the email address on the screen. They are due by January 31st, 2023, and each January 31st. But this year that happens to be January 31st of 2023. It is important that we get these W-2 submissions on time. When a taxpayer, an individual, an employee files a tax return, we do verify the withholding as reported by the employer, including with the cities and towns. So if your W-2 submissions are not done on time and are not accurate, it will impact the distribution of the refunds to your employees. So that's a reminder of the process. There actually is the full process is in a document, a W-2 submission process on our website, and we can provide that to you if need be. We already mentioned that the filing of the real estate conveyance returns is as important as filing the payment for those real estate conveyance taxes. It does affect the overall distribution. If the return is not filed, we cannot do the proper distribution. So we need your help making sure that that happens. Again, reinforcing, you can manage securities and all taxes can be paid in one system by signing up for the portal. If anyone has any questions about signing up for the portal, certainly reach out to the portal team, and let's make sure that each city and town has the benefits that that portal can provide. And Nina, started our whole presentation off, or a portion of our presentation off, about the refund offset program. It provides refunds based on the taxpayer's filings. It can reduce your outstanding liabilities, increase your revenue stream. And the most important, one of the important features of that is you have the ability to submit the file for as often as makes it, as you think you're going to get the benefit from. We have some cities and towns that submit the file weekly so that we get the most up-to-date data. We have some vendors that do it quarterly. We also have some that really just do it the once a year. But by only doing it once a year, you may end up where we offset for things that people have already paid. So the more frequently you do that, the better it is. So Nina, I don't know if you want to come back on and summarize anything, or if we just want to listen to some questions.
Yes, so I just wanted to stress that if you're interested in participating in the refund offset program, because we've already started our tax season preparations, our bandwidth for putting people on, the testing, all of that, it will likely get to a real offset by June or so. So I think it's going to take the cities and towns several months to issue the 30 days notice, get your data aligned, do the testing, but we likely will not be able to implement this for those of you who are not already participating until the summer. And that will put you in a good position for we do issue refunds year round. So with the October filing, you may see revenue immediately, not only from the 30-day notice, but because of our frequency at which we send refunds, you may get it throughout the year. The other thing is I will be working with Jennifer to get an email out to all of the cities and towns that are participating already in the refund offset program to refresh some of these agreements. Make sure we have the right people on the current signatures, that we have a good contact information for the cities and towns. So I'll be working with Jennifer on that, and we will get this information to you. Finally, as always, reach out. You have our contact. Leo, do you want to give your, you have excise and you have the taxpayer portal team. The other thing that some of you will give Leo's address in a minute, but the other thing is a number of you may have gotten notices from Rhode Island Energy related to sales tax exemptions. We heard from one of the cities and towns, and that occurred as an in error. Utility electricity has not been taxable since 2015. Avalara, the company on Rhode Island Energy's behalf who sent those notices, is sending a resend notice. And so for those of you that have gotten those mailings from RI Energy, look for an upcoming notice that should be coming. With that, Leo dropped in his email, and thank you. So we look forward to our continued collaboration. If you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. I'll pause now in case there are any other questions in the chat.
I will say, first of all, thank you to both of you for a great presentation. Lots of really good info and ways to make things easier for everyone and keep the monies flowing. So that's always good. if anybody does have questions, you do have the emails there. You also have the ability to just, because this is just a regular old meeting on Zoom, if you want to take off your mic and ask a question, you're more than welcome to do that as well if you don't have chat of ability. So just put that out there, see if there's any takers. All right, well, that's the sign of a good presentation when you answered all the questions. All right, well, thank you so much. On behalf of the league, thanks to people for attending, and we will work together certainly to get all that information up to date.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Nina. Thanks, Leah.